lawyers and legal professionals have no good way to understand all of the options and services available to them at the point of pain within their workflow. The Holy Grail of enterprise adoption and engagement is to deliver these solutions within the workflow, and that's where our focus is.
Today on Law Next, my guest is Joshua Maley, the founder and CEO of Theorem LTS, a new platform for law firms and in-house legal teams that aims to be the legal industry's superhighway for innovation by bringing together the features of a marketplace, a platform, and a workflow engine all within a unified ecosystem. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you are listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to today's conversation, let me tell you about one of the sponsors of today's episode. Does your law firm struggle with managing and tracking client documents for signatures? What if I told you the process could be simplified? Introducing e-signature from Practice Panther. Now you can easily send multiple documents for e-signature from right inside of Practice Panther. Gone are the days of chasing clients for time-sensitive documents. Send multiple documents at a time and receive real-time updates that give you a holistic view of a document's progress. Your documents are securely stored and easy to access right in your account. Learn more about how Practice Panther can streamline your law firm at practicepanther.com/esignature. Now on to today's interview. Josh, welcome to the show.
Bob, thank you so much for having me.
So I just gave a little, I just gave my little elevator speech of what Theorem LTS is, but why don't you describe it for us? Give us the short version, and then we'll drill down more into it.
No, it was pretty good. I mean, what Theorem actually is a marketplace-driven, no-code workflow integration engine. And, that is just word salad. But it is exactly that. We're combining marketplace with a platform and underlying no-code engine to be this sort of single gateway for solving legal tech adoption and help firms understand this incredibly fragmented landscape and help with the connectivity and solve the adoption issue, really.
Yeah. And as we are recording this today, you kind of came out of the closet with it yesterday. I mean, you've been around for almost 2 years in developing this, and it hasn't been a secret. It's not like you've been operating in stealth mode, but you've been kind of slowly taking it to market and made a little bit more of a splash yesterday. So kind of where are you in launching this now?
Yeah, well, I think, there's 3 ways to win, right? You could be first, you can be smarter, or you can cheat. That's probably the third one. Cheating not allowed, particularly in the legal industry. So let's just put that to the side. And, moving first has its disadvantages. So I think we were really focused on solving the underlying problem. And I think that problem distilled is really that lawyers and legal professionals have no good way to understand all of the options and services available to them at the point of pain within their workflow. And there's sort of this trickle to that, which is, and there's no way to adopt all these new technology solutions on a per transaction basis, which is more of a cost issue. But effectively, the Holy Grail of enterprise adoption and engagement is to deliver these solutions within the workflow. And that's where our focus is.
You, as I said, you've been working on this a couple of years now. Tell us about your background and what led you to want to create this.
Just actually on my LinkedIn post to your mention of us kind of coming out a little bit. And, I was getting a little nostalgic of the journey, and it's just been wild. I think legal tech is, this is my 5th business, and it's by far the most challenging business that I've had to build an industry that I've been a part of. My background being in institutional finance, I worked for Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, Merrill Lynch. From that, I joined a family that was a client of mine at Merrill Lynch. Long story, but to open up our own angel fund and invest in consumer tech and clean energy and different things like that. While we were waiting for that portfolio to vest, I had a nice offer to go to Wake Forest Law School, which is where I am today, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I moved back after law school to New York and moved back here to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 3 months ago, really. And, to come back to law school stomping grounds and getting through law school was an experience in its own. And I think it was kind of what set me on the path to building a single platform that could connect all of these fragmented tools to deliver full legal services and to think about the power of technology and where these UIs were headed with matching the analysis of senior level attorneys in many cases. And if we could connect them, I could, I wish I could have learned about these things while I was in school. So, actually, one of the strange things that happened to me is my second semester of law school, because as you probably know, Bob, you don't get anything done in the first semester of law school. Just heads down and figuring out the game. But my second semester of law school, my associate dean called me to run like a quick lecture he knew my background. He knew I was very interested in legal tech, and that's why I was there. Learning law school experience is its own thing. But I started to talk about all these different new tools and the fundraising that was going on. You had big companies start to raise serious money. And, we were just talking about general collaboration tools, Slack and Teams, and, raise your hand if you know Palantir, and it was just very clear that the industry was far from what I was experiencing in the consumer side as an investor and in institutional finance. So I was like, hey, there's an opportunity to build a platform here. Ended up meeting Scott Mazarski, who introduced me to you, I think, right before the pandemic, before we started this business, where I had just released kind of like V.1 of Theorem at Legal Week. And, it's just since then, I'm 3 years out of law school, and it's been a great journey. So thanks to my team and thanks to our investors and all the people who've been involved with this, because I've gotten to meet more CKOs, CIOs, COOs of major firms and in-house departments than I could have imagined possible, really.
Yeah, and Scott being a veteran of legal technology in many ways, an investor, and he was at Bloomberg Law for a while and various other positions. One big difference between when I was in law school and when you were in law school is that when I was in law school, legal tech wasn't really even quite a thing. There wasn't much in the way of legal tech at that point. And we are currently at a time in which, in some ways there's an abundance of riches. There is, all sorts of different legal technology addressing all sorts of different kinds of problems. Is that part of the problem that you're trying to address here? I mean, is to help legal professionals make sense of all this?
I think that's exactly right. I think you want options, right? As a buyer, you want options. Particularly from a cost perspective, right? If there's no options, then the supplier gets to control the price. So you definitely want, the fragmentation can be good in that way. But the problem is it's not very clear on what these things actually do. Is a certain contract analysis tool good in a particular practice group area? Where should it be deployed? So our marketplace, which is how we are gathering this information to plug into the platform and plug into our no-code engine, which helps you connect these tools and allow that fragmentation to persist in some ways, is solving that, right? Where we have awesome data on number of peer firms using applications, from ratings to reviews to use cases to average price by peer firm that they're paying, the suggested practice group for rollout, providing firms everything that they need to really assess, identify, assess from a security perspective, from a contract perspective, and then from the procurement side, be able to bring that into a central ecosystem and then connect those tools.
Earlier this year or last year, I guess it was last year at some point, I wrote a column about the proliferation of legal marketplaces. And I mentioned a couple that had, more than a couple, that had kind of all sprung up over the last year or so. I didn't mention Theorem, as you pointed out to me at the time. But in my defense, you were still kind of, you hadn't quite, launched yet at that point. But this has been sort of a coincidence of timing that there have been various platforms that have come along, marketplaces that have come along over the last year, and they're very different in what they do and how they address this issue. Where do you kind of place yourself in that spectrum? How are you different how are you different than what's out there, what some of these other marketplaces are? Why should a legal professional want to use Theorem over some of the others?
Yeah, I think and it's a good thing that we have more people working on sort of this adoption problem, and that's a good thing. With regard to all these other, kind of quote unquote marketplaces, you've got the full spectrum, right? You've got sort of these free products. There's hundreds of directories at this point, kind of allowing the problem to just exacerbating the problem, really. Then you've got interesting things like the TR marketplace. That's a product that's trying to have its own marketplace and its ecosystem, which has, we talk about 1- and 2-way doors. I think those are 1-way doors.
Yeah. A little more like Salesforce or something in that sense, right?
Right. There's tons of these sort of product ecosystems. Yeah. And then you've got sort of quote unquote firm supported marketplaces, which we're not really, sure what those are doing. But what's really clear is that none of them...
Which would be Rain and Court or something like that, is every time?
Yeah, sure. Really, any of these, one-way, what I call one-way marketplaces, because of the one-way doors, it's very difficult to then lend yourself to the neutrality that you need to build. And that's the point I was getting to, is that there's two things that are clear, that none of these have been able to achieve the scale that they need to actually have a market, to put the market into marketplace. And that's maybe...
And by scale, you mean the numbers of vendors who are participating in it as opposed to the number of users who are coming to it to find out about the market?
I would say both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because even at the large, if you're getting to a large percentage of, let's say, larger firms, right? You have the contract issue. What's the level of transactions? What's your model at that point? It's very difficult to understand how you can scale that model. Right. The other piece of this is just a lack of content. So to your point about the number of vendors, but it's also how you are categorizing the standards that you need to implement and the functionality that you need to actually distill these vendors down from a category to a sub-functionality or subcategory level, whether they're best for small firms, mid-sized firms, large firms, in-house departments. What do they integrate with? Where are they available in terms of location? What languages are they deployed in? What role are they best for? What the price is, which is... it's incredibly difficult to understand whether it's the marketplaces or whether it's the products in the marketplace, how they're pricing their products.
Yeah, a lot of them just won't tell you.
Yes, which is why you need to have a collaborative ecosystem that allows you to have a sufficient amount of shared vendor intelligence and is focused on sort of the value add there. So, I'm going to tell you.
Let me just stop you right there, because does that mean that I can, if I'm a law firm participating in the ecosystem on Theorem, I might be able to get some intelligence from another law firm as to what it costs to use a particular product?
That's correct. This is an intra-industry solution, and I'll get to how this works. But effectively, every law firm can build out its own internal ecosystem, and then there's some levels of anonymous shared data that allow everyone to lift all ships. Is that you have to share some of this, right? I mean. Right. If I have a conversation with any CKO, one of the first questions is how many law firms are using your product, right? And of course, you could never tell somebody else that that law firm was using your product. Right. Sort of an interesting dynamic, but the point is that the number doesn't need to be a problem, right? To share the number of these peer firms, and there's a lot of different data that we can together as a legal industry, when thinking about all that's going on with what's happening outside of the industry, that we can collaborate to make this marketplace work and to have a little bit better adoption that allows us to not fall behind the initiatives that are happening from the big four accounting firms and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So to get to what we're doing, we've got marketplace, platform, and this third piece I'll talk about in a second. But effectively, what we're going to do is what Apple did for the consumer tech market. We're going to apply that to the enterprise. So what Apple did in the consumer market, we want to apply to the enterprise, at least some of those things. And what I mean by that is Apple has an app store. It's got its device and its ecosystem. It's, the phones. Same thing for, if you're on another platform. And you're pulling data and applications from that app store, which has got all the things you need to purchase and identify these solutions. And you're able to customize your experience on that Apple iPhone, right? You can move the apps around. You've got sort of like a single sign-on experience because once you're logged into your phone, you can go into those apps and you can kind of seamlessly move between them. And what we're doing is adding another layer of that, which is this third piece, the no-code workflow engine. And it's used in a couple of ways that I'm going to get to based on who our users are. So we've got 3 core users. We've got firms and in-house. We've got vendors. And then the third one is like legal organizations, like associations, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
like bar associations or something like that.
Yes, it could be, we had a great partnership that we recently announced with the Asia Pacific Legal Tech Association. There's a great writer for that blog if anyone wants to check that out. I think that was you. So we have firms use the marketplace, right, to identify and look through all this data that they need to adopt solutions. They pull that content into a centralized portal where they can decide, right, just like in the Apple environment, if I've got a kid, I don't know if you've had this opportunity, but I can manage which devices my purchases show up, what levels of access my kid has to certain applications when she steals my iPad, right? and giving the firms that ability to manage that core platform and track sign-in data. Because one of the big things is we should identify for the firms the level of redundancy that they have, what their level of utilization is. And most firms that you talk to, their professionals are saying, what solutions does a firm have? And generally, they've got no portal for that. So we solve that problem on day one. This third piece for the firm is the no-code integration engine, which allows them to do 2 things. The first being that they connect tools. So think of no-code not in the way that you think of the Brighters of the world or Neota or those really great workflow tools. That are like a blank canvas. I'm not sure if I'm, ringing a bell here.
Yeah.
But for those are essentially building applications within there. Well, what if the application was a single node on that drag and drop workflow experience? And what if you could easily visually integrate all of those disparate applications in this sort of canvas-like experience, as well as bring in all of the core business tools that the in-house clients use, like your Slacks, your Microsoft Teams, your HubSpots, your Salesforce, all those sort of core business tools into that environment and run processes between them. So that's the first thing. You can connect these tools. And the second thing is, as a core template offering that we have, is the ability to identify the triggers, which we pull again from the marketplace based on the role, based on this use cases initiative, which is now, we worked on this great use case initiative with Maya Markovich and Vishal Agnihotri and Angelina Colombo. That's a big law firm, pretty large size law firm representation and a in-house representation to show that we can collaborate and we can share this data. And use cases are the who, what, when, where, why, and how a solution is used. We can plug that into our engine and allow you to create these end-to-end workflows and deliver these solutions in context for the user, identifying a trigger for when a firm subscription to an application should be delivered to that end user. So,
which goes back to what you were talking about earlier, which is the part of the problem that marketplaces don't always adequately address, is understanding which products are for which type of user or for which particular use case or for what particular size of firm or whatever else. By tying the kind of the market to the use cases, you're able to help law firms and legal departments better kind of sort that out. Is that right?
That's right. And also giving, and we'll get to this in this next segment for our next use case, which is on the vendor side, and giving the vendors the ability to display these use cases and how they feel their solution should be used. And it's always interesting to see the differences between how firms use them and how vendors use these applications. And that being very important because before I jump into the vendors here, the firm can use this three-pronged approach, this marketplace, centralized system, and no-code engine to build their own ecosystem of their own internal data as well for how their members use these technologies. They don't have to share all of those those internal use cases, should they feel that those are proprietary in some way, which is whether or not I agree with that or not is not really the point. But they can build out their own internal ecosystem.
Joshua Maley describes Theorem as an integrated legal technology ecosystem, part legal tech marketplace, part innovation platform, and part workflow integrator, designed for three core groups of users: law firms and legal departments, legal tech vendors, and legal associations. As you just heard him explain, that first group, law firms and legal departments, can use the Theorem platform to identify tech solutions and then pull them into a centralized portal where the firms can manage and integrate all their applications. When we return, we'll talk about those other users, vendors and associations, and how they can use the Theorem platform. But first, let's hear from one of the sponsors that makes today's show possible. Don't spend time tracking down your client's signatures for documents. The newly released e-signature feature from Practice Panther makes it easier than ever to manage time-sensitive documents in one place. Access signature statuses in real time, safely store documents, and send clients notifications, all without having to navigate to another platform. Learn more about how Practice Panther can save your law firm time at practicepanther.com/eSignature. Welcome back to Law Next and my conversation with Joshua Maley, the founder and CEO of Theorem LTS. Maley's been building and testing Theorem for nearly 2 years, but only recently began to formally introduce it to the legal market. Before the break, he described how law firms and legal departments can use the Theorem platform. Another key set of users are the vendors who can list and sell their products through the portal. As we return to the conversation, I asked Maley to talk about how vendors can use Theorem.
Vendors, same thing. Marketplace, platform, and no-code engine. Vendors are displaying, and as you would think and surmise, they're using the platform to, in a no-code way, create their listing and have people understand their use cases and do all those different things. They also have a lot of access to some cool tools like contract analysis and security assessment. And in both the firm and vendor cases, there's an RFP element that we have. We have an advanced RFP tool that allows the firm to quickly send out an RFP. And in the vendor portal, the vendor can respond to that RFP should that RFP match the pieces of their, the different taxonomy elements or categorizations that the firm is looking for based on price and category and tool and use case. And of course, the no-code engine is giving that as well to the vendors so that they can build in their solution into these sort of complex workflows.
For the vendors, is the primary advantage for them this sort of direct access to the firms and the legal departments? I mean, is it primarily it's another marketing channel for them, right? I mean, is there another advantage to them to being on this platform, to being part of Theorem?
Well, I think retention is a growth engine of itself, right? So when a firm has subscribed to your service at whatever practice group somewhere in the world, particularly for global firms, you need a way to communicate your solution to all the rest of that firm. You also need a way to build your tool into that workflow so that in a year, the firm's not calling you up and saying, "Hey, we had nobody use your tool. We didn't have enough usage. We didn't have enough availability and access and visibility for your tool." And for the vendors, that is a huge value add for firms that do purchase them through the system to be able to say, "Hey, this is how we're integrated, and we can put up our own solutions as well as feature ourselves in the solution as well as deliver ourselves." It's like built-in client success.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the third prong being associations. This is kind of the easy one. Associations are using that tool, that portal. And remember, for vendors, right, the portal is very specific to vendors. Associations very specific to associations. Law firm, admin is different than law firm users. We had to build interfaces for each one of these roles. And for associations, they can build out their own internal ecosystem, much in the way that firms do, so that they can share data amongst their members. They can have test drives. Firms get access to test drives. Vendors can use their portal to create test drives. And the associations can use test drives to offer the feature to offer their association members access to legal technology. And we're seeing this happen for a number of state bar associations. And of course, now with our partnership with Alita in the APAC region, for over 200 firm members, where test drives can be an easy way to say, hey, here's a bundle of solutions in a particular practice group area that we can offer as a part of our membership. And that's something that would be very difficult for them to build as a standalone product.
Yeah. Who is it within a firm who's most likely to be engaging with Theorem on a sort of ongoing basis? Is it kind of their people in their innovation group, people in their procurement, IT? Who are the ones at the firm are most likely to do that?
I would say that it depends, of course, on the size of the firm. Right? We have everyone from 1 to 10 person firms, and then kind of all the way up as well. Remember, you have the in-house kind of side of things too. But it could be, generally a lot of my talks are happening with knowledge managers. And in some cases it could just be a partner at one office at the firm. And that, bottoms up strategy we're seeing more and more, particularly with the sales cycle at the top end. So, we need to solve that problem for them. But to the extent that the problem is solved and there's just still this sort of like cultural adverse, very adverse to risk, preventing us to sell at the top end, it becomes more difficult to continue with them. But I would say primarily there's an innovation team, and those good innovation teams, do a great job at making sure that they're the gate for us to discuss our value proposition.
Yeah. And would the most common use case scenario be effectively shopping for a product? I mean, say I'm working in innovation in a law firm, and we've been talking about it. We know we really need to bring in a better solution for contract review or something like that. How would I use Theorem to help me achieve that?
Right. I think it's important again to remember that it's a platform that has a marketplace. But right. There is a great and I think our marketplace it just happens, because of the state of the industry, just happens to be in my opinion, the best. But to run simple procurement process through Theorem is of course a great use case. I mean, to standardize your RFP, to have those standards that you need from a contract level, to get we partnered with TermScout, a really great organization that provides objective analysis of all the core tools. To reduce that procurement process. But one of the major use cases, talk to any of these firms, particularly in the IT side, is integration. Managing those integrations is very difficult. Understanding what integrates with what, very difficult. Building one-off integrations, very expensive. So solving that problem for them.
Yeah. And can Theorem, insofar as it is a platform, can Theorem help a firm understand what solutions out there are going to integrate with the solutions that the firm is currently using, with its current tech stack?
Yeah, we have a great tool for when you look at any vendor profile, when you're sourcing a solution, on that vendor profiles page, we can show you the stack compatibility, the compatibility with your stack. That means, the applications that you're using. So we'll say, hey, this is, number of these tools, it's already working with your application stack. You don't have to build another one-off integration.
Yeah. And you've talked about firms sharing their information about their tech stack. How does that work, and what are the implications of that? How public is that information becoming?
This is a loaded question. I think we're talking to firms and we're talking to our clients, and we're always going to do. I think that's been our strategy, is just, to focus on the client's problem, what the client wants. But I think there is something to be said that there is a lot of even public data out there right now on solutions and solution use. And these firms are still very wary about it, even though they're having cross-firm collaboration. Like, when I spoke to Vishal, who is the CKO at Hinshaw, she said, look, these obstacles have been blown away. And I completely agree with that. When I need a solution, I call up somebody in my network who's at a similar position to me to figure that out, right? Even if it's at another firm. Right. This sharing of this information is happening. It's just that for some odd reason, they just there's no great capture tool. And we can offer that. And I think that I was very wary about answering this question in the past, because I think we are right now keeping the anonymity in place. But to the extent that there are public information about what a tech stack or a firm is, I mean, we can certainly share that. And I think the firms know that too, particularly if we can show. I think the big problem is endorsement. The firms are worried about endorsement. So It's not necessarily like, oh, hey, I've got some proprietary stack, or it's, I've had the security. I mean, what a crazy argument. Oh, well, that's going to tell the hackers where to hack us. Well, I'm sure that your logo is somewhere next to some vendor somewhere. And if your stack isn't secure, you have another problem, and we need to show you, we need to provide you solutions, which we have through partners, for making sure that you can secure that stack. But I mean, the endorsement is the big problem. What level of usage is this, right? They don't want to see a logo slapped next to their firm logo, and when they're just piloting. So, and of course, we allow them to delineate whether or not they're just piloting. So if that's getting closer to the answer, then I'll leave it there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, there isn't the firms don't have the kind of interest in having to maintain sort of confidentiality around their tech stack in the way that they do around, I don't know, their billing data or their client data or anything like that. It's a whole different equation. And you're right that a lot of that is probably already out there, and the firms, I'm sure, certainly talk about that stuff. It is funny though that sometimes firms are happy. It probably this applies to everybody, not just firms. But some people are often happy to talk about things, but when it's like sort of getting committed to writing somewhere, then it's a whole different, taking it to a whole different level, and they get antsy about that. But what about on the vendor side? How do firms know that you're not, I don't know, in some way sort of favoring certain vendors or giving, priority or prominence to certain vendors on the platform?
Oh, first of all, there's no ads on the platform. That's step one. Two is that we're completely tech agnostic, because, although we are a vendor, our product is a connection engine. We do not want to be in the business of competing with any of those firms. And I can't say that we should be responsible for the fact that no one can find their solution, or they haven't sufficiently conveyed their value proposition. So I wanted to say we're not responsible entirely for certain solutions having less visibility when they're the nth, 100 and nth solution in contract drafting. As you know, there are hundreds of IP solutions. There are now hundreds of drafting solutions, hundreds of contract analysis. Our job is to do the best we can, and also enabling them to have some visibility on what types of things they need to do from a features perspective, from clearly articulating their use case so that they can be found. And the industry today is small enough that strong search, it's growing, but strong enough that strong search, particularly the search tools that we have, can give you the visibility that you need. And that's always been the problem. Like, you search these directories, these kind of stripped down free products, and the search is just inaccurate.
Yeah. So you're Switzerland when it comes to the solutions that get listed or that participate in this site.
I don't, I'll take the analogy. I'll take it. I won't argue.
Well, I mean, you're not pre-vetting them, are you?
Oh, vendors can get started in a single day.
Yeah.
Well, we do review the listing, and they have in-app upgrades to get some of the other functionality that they might need, particularly around the workflow stuff. But no, we're not a walled garden in any sort of way.
Yeah. So how are you going to make money with this? Or are you?
We have what I call the accessibility and sustainability model. I mean, it's incredibly inexpensive for a firm to develop their own internal ecosystem using Theorem. $2,400 for the year starts. Beat that. And on the user side, it's incredibly cheap. A single user side, it's $20 a month to get access to the level of content that we have, which I think is both, again, accessible and reasonable. We do not want to offer a stripped down free product. Because we just can't support the level of robust search, et cetera, that you need to make this work. And on the vendor side, we have an in-app upgrade model where it's easy to get started, and there's some pretty cool promotional tools and different things like the workflow builder, which can get expensive to the extent that you want to build out hundreds and hundreds of workflows, that people have access to. So the vendors have access to those in-app upgrades, the firms. It should be piecemeal. I think we haven't seen enough of the sort of consumer tech or outside of the legal industry technology, particularly around like task management tools or project management tools, where we can get a little bit away from these super crazy seat license models.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing that effectively.
Yeah. From a UI point of view, what does it mean for me as a firm to sort of have my own ecosystem on Theorem? Do I have a dashboard that I log into and work from, or what does it look like, sort of?
Well, we'll go back to it. Just like your iPhone, you have App Store functionality, you have a marketplace, and that marketplace can show you the content that your firm uploads to it. Yeah. So you've got just this like baseline shared vendor intelligence. Think of it as like the templated marketplace. Mm-hmm. And then you could display all of your firm's use cases, your firm's reviews, so reviews from users at your firm's, workflows that your firm may have for those particular types of solutions, whether there's educational tools around that kind of thing. So, I mean, think of it as a branded marketplace, without it being overly branded, but it's got your firm's content on that marketplace. And of course, you're accessing that marketplace when you sign into your portal, which looks very similar to an iPhone, where you can sign into all of those applications that your firm has pulled from the marketplace, to the extent that they exist, into the firm portal, so that you have a single point of what is it that the firm has, drag and drop, just like your iPhone, to create your front interface, and you can sign into those applications. The firm admin can track those sign-ins and understand the utilization at the firm. Yeah.
So I don't know, if I'm a 200 lawyer firm, say, how many logons am I likely to want to have for my firm? Is it just going to depend on, am I going to have some admin or IT or, KM or innovation people, or do I want every lawyer in my firm to be on this?
It could be at any scale that you'd like. So you could have it. I mean, some firms, again, this is sort of a consolidation problem when you have a full firm license for this giant consolidated product, right, and you're only using one piece of it. So the firms can use it and pay for that level of utilization of our platform. So now I want to use this for procurement. It's just my KM team. I'm going to pay my organization license. I'm going to have 8 users, and I'm, my 8-person KM team, and we're going to use it for procurement. Maybe they want to bring in, IT, and they're going to have a number of users doing some things in the workflow side, or they're going to rely on the vendor workflow creations. And then they may want that single sign-on experience because they don't have it. They don't have MFA built in. They don't have, maybe they're using an Okta or a SAML. This is getting really in the weeds, by the way. I don't want to get into authentication. It took me a long time to learn myself. But yeah, I mean, we have bridges to all the major single sign-on providers. Yeah. So it just makes it easy for the user to know what it is and be able to sign into it without having to remember their credentials.
Yeah. Josh, other than you, who is behind this company? Do you have investors or backers, or how are you kind of financing and bringing it to market?
We have a few small investors. We've also have investors from my older days in VC. We've got a very small team, so I'm always happy for those flattering comparisons, but I think we're doing things a little bit differently. And we've got a very small team. My co-founder, Albert de Guzman, really an exceptional development wizard. We just hired another developer in Colorado. It's really great. It's a very small team, and I thank them for getting me this far.
Yeah, I know we've talked about the fact that you went through the Lex Lab Accelerator out at UC Hastings Law School in San Francisco, only you went through it in probably the worst possible year.
We started the company like 3 months before the pandemic, and so we were ready to go. We raised enough money to get through that, and as well as we had to build that baseline level of business to survive. So that's what we did.
Yeah. So with having kind of made this more formal announcement this week, where are you in developing this? What's next in terms of building out the platform, building out user base? What are your plans for the next 6 months to a year?
Well, one of the major things that we're looking to do is focus a lot on these legal organizations to drive a lot of that shared vendor intelligence, because these associations are sharing that data internally. A lot of those members being part of firms, so it gives us some, it's a really interesting strategy for us to gather that. So we want to continue to help regional ecosystems like associations in helping them power their platform and do it in a cost-effective way. And then the other one, which is something I failed to mention earlier, which is allowing firms to take disparate applications and create their own client-facing solutions for their in-house users, and then sell them on our marketplace. Hopefully that makes sense.
So they can develop their own solutions for specific issues, and then kind of turn around and then resell those on the marketplace.
Right. So there are a ton of very esoteric solutions on the marketplace in legal, as you probably know, whether they're in IP or whether in real estate or whatever. And they can be combined with a bunch of other tools to create pretty strong levels of, document automation and that type of thing. And these digital solutions which in-house firms are dying for, and you're seeing that more firms are trying to build their digital solutions. They can use our platform to do that, and they can use our platform to then sell those solutions.
So kind of DIY innovation, and then once you've innovated, turn it around and productize it.
Right. So firms becoming vendors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of firms are developing their own solutions anyway, that are in fact standalone solutions that they are productizing or bringing to market in various ways.
That's right. I hear some of them are working on AI projects, but could just be a lot of marketing. Who knows?
Could be.
It could be. But the marketing growth is great, and legal tech is about growth, or growth marketing, I suppose, in many ways. But that fails to remember that like legal tech is primarily about protecting the downside. Yeah. I think at this point, it's a hedge. It's a hedge strategy, and it should be deployed much faster because they're doing it outside the industry and excelling rate.
Yeah. One other question I meant to ask earlier and completely forgot. I mean, you've talked about this sort of 3 target audiences of law firms: legal departments, vendors, and associations. What if I don't fall into any of those categories? What if I'm a solo lawyer out there somewhere, or just somebody with an interest in legal tech? Is there anything in Theorem for me?
I had over 1,000 waitlisted public email accounts. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And
public
we're not
like
sure.
From Gmail or something.
Yes, Gmail, Yahoo.
Non-commercial domains.
Right. And I'm sure many of these people have, firms and vendors associated with their emails, but we'll see. But we're not really quite sure how to handle the flood. Our big thing right now is to make sure that the vendors know that the views that are coming on their page, and they can upgrade to have great analytics on who's viewing the page, who's searching them, how they need to tweak their page to be better found. They want to know that they're serious buyers on the platform. Right. So I don't know if we're catering right now to just people interested in legal tech. But I could see them like that. There's a quasi market there, but I don't know if that's where we really want to head. I think we want to make sure that we have some standards on the access level. I mean, look, we've got sort of 6 user types, right? You're going to have firms in-house. You'll have the vendors, of course. You'll have consultants at some point, ALSPs, that kind of thing.
I see bloggers listed on the front page of your
media. Yes. So media users will have a really, really interesting feature because we do want there to be more content. Again, I think that there's a lack of content overall in these typical marketplace models. And I would like to flag for media users, changes that are happening over the ecosystem so that there could be a little bit more transparency on what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, the greater problem, as we alluded to earlier in this conversation, is just that there is such a variety of legal tech out there, and there are so many claims about what different products do or don't do or are capable of, and anything that can help make sense of this and do it in a way that's really practical, that can really drive a particular firm or legal department's adoption and use of tech is really an essential tool these days and really valuable. So, I've been asking you a bunch of questions. Let me throw it open to you. Anything else that you wanted to kind of say about Theorem that we haven't talked about or that you want people to know about it?
Well, I definitely would check out our use cases initiative. I think that there are some really phenomenal women behind that, and intelligent women that are behind that initiative with us and supporting us through that. They're members of our advisory board. So check out the use cases initiative.
And how can they do that?
They can head right over to Theorem. Under our blog, you have the use case initiative, or get that Google search in, Theorem use cases. So I would check that out. I also want to, one of the things, particularly in the month that we're in, is we have diversity certifications for diverse suppliers, helping in-house departments meet their supplier diversity standards and help firms understand the level of supplier diversity that they have with the vendors and application owners that they choose. So we've got some diversity certifications available there where you can easily find minority-owned businesses, for instance. And I think a lot of that is really just key for us to build something sustainable as well. 1% of all subscription transactions, vendor purchases, and remember, vendors can be paid directly through our platform. It goes to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So it's another big one for us.
That's great that you're doing that. Well, Josh, thank you very much for speaking with me today. It's been a pleasure, and congratulations on all the hard work you've put into this and on getting it out there.
Thank you so much, Bob. Appreciate it.
My thanks to Joshua Maley for joining me today to tell us about Theorem LTS. I hope you found the show interesting and enjoyed it. Another show to check out is Contract Teardown, launched recently by our sponsor Law Insider on YouTube. Each week, they analyze contracts ranging from Y Combinator's SAFE agreement to Robinhood Financial's terms of service. Find them at lawinsider.com/resources. Law Next is produced, engineered, and edited by Populous Radio. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of Law Next.